What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. This is our prediction show where we're going to try to break down what's going to happen today as the Hounds travel to Rhode Island and the Riveters travel to Flower City. I am Mike Sparks. Joining me, as always, is Justin Ashcraft. Justin, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Had a super busy week, but glad to be at the weekend and have a 3-day weekend. So that'll be awesome to have off work on Monday and get a little bit of rest. Laura Ellen was in Canada all week, and so it was a busy week of single solo parenting.
Well, not only single, solo parenting your own kid, but Steve also came out, so you were kind of parenting Steve when you guys went to the Philly match. How was that?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was a great it was a really fun game and a fun experience. That was Raina Jeans, our 5-year-old. That was her first time to Subaru Park. And she was very confused the whole game of who we were supposed to be cheering for because she sees me cheer for both those teams at home, and so she's very confused. But I think Steve mentioned on our Mongol Slack that I made my choice very quickly, and it was about 2 minutes into the game, and there was a foul that was not called for the Riverhounds that should have been, and I made my feelings known to the ref, and he goes, "Oh, you made your choice very quickly tonight." I was like, "Yeah, I guess I did." So, so, but it was a fun night. Rained all night, and it was a wet game. But overall, I'm super happy with the way the Hounds played. I think for my kind of initial thoughts, I think it was probably the Hounds' best performance to this point in the season, and that's weird to say as a 4-1 loss. But I've watched Philly do that to multiple MLS teams and do that exact thing the way they did. They just kind of grind teams down, and then they have 3 or 4 moments of really good passing movements and moments of magic, and they score goals. And so I think I was not upset about the way the Hounds played. I thought they played really, really well. Steve and I both kind of thought that if the Hounds continue to play the way they played on Wednesday night, that they're going to have good success against USL opponents. And so we hope that we see that same level of continuation this time. And then it was fun to see the guys after the game. They did a great job coming over and giving high fives to a few Hounds fans that were there, and got a great picture of Raina Jean with Danny Griffin. So can't complain too much.
Yeah. No, agreed, 1,000%. Watching the game, like you said, it probably was their best performance that we've seen to date. It feels like this might have been the first time that we had the majority of the pieces that maybe Bob wanted to have where he wanted to have them, maybe. But definitely hope to see it continue. Let's talk a little bit about the game that's happening today. The Hounds head to Rhode Island. Just a little bit of background on Rhode Island. Rhode Island haven't lost in their last 5. They have 3 wins and 2 draws. Most recently, they beat Birmingham 1-0 and then beat Tampa 3-0 all over the course of a week. Statistically, they're doing really well. They actually have 20 more shots on target than we do, and they've faced 1 less shot on target than we have. So I think the prevailing thought is that, sure, we know that the Hounds are in a bit of a slump. We're not scoring a lot of goals because we're not taking a lot of shots, but at least we're not giving up too many shots on the other end. Well, here's a case of where, Rhode Island is averaging 2 more ish shots per game that they're taking, and they've actually allowed 1 less shot per game than we have. So they're both defensively and offensively, they're doing okay. The big question anytime we talk about Rhode Island is, how's Chico doing? How's Marky Barra doing? How's Danny Rivera doing? Um, Chico, not much better than Augie. He only has 1 goal this season, which may or may not be a surprise to people. I think Rovi is coming back from an injury, but neither he or Marky Barra has been in the 18 over the past 2 games. So who knows whether or not we'll actually see them in this one. Their keeper, Koki Vegas, has 2 shutouts in a row and 4 on the season. So a pretty good keeper. But again, it sounds like they're limiting the shots that they're facing, similar to what the Hounds do. And so far, they've been unbeaten at home. So I just threw a whole lot of stuff at you. What do you think about when you think about Rhode Island?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting anytime I hear those statistics about they have more shots than, all that kind of stuff. I kind of look at it and go, well, they haven't played us yet. So, um, it's kind of one of those situations where there's a lot of teams in the USL who are not defensively sound, and they're
Right.
not as good defensively as what the Hounds are. And so you can have a stretch of games where you take a lot of shots because you're playing teams, Tampa being one of those that is not doing well this season at all. And so you can get a lot of shots off in that game. And all of a sudden your shot, it looks like, oh, you have all these shots. And then it's like, well, yeah, but you haven't played the defensively good teams yet. You just played a team that gave up 3 goals. And so I don't see that being I don't see that being a thing that I'm like, I'm worried now about that, because I think the Hounds do such a good job of limiting shots. Now, what worries me in there is if they have faced one less than we have, is means they're also a defensively sound team. And with our scoring troubles, do we get out of the slump? I don't know, but like I said, I was very encouraged by what I saw on Wednesday night. And I think if the Hounds can roll in with that same level of intensity and the same sharpness and quickness that they played with on Wednesday, like, I think we'll be okay. Um, it remains to see if we win the game or not. And then I kind of go back and, like, they've gone 5 unbeaten, or they have not gotten beaten in their last 5, so means they're due for a loss. So maybe the
Yeah.
Hounds can pull that off this weekend.
I am curious. I know we'll get into sort of score prediction, and we could talk a little bit about how we think that this team could end up setting up, how the Hounds could potentially set up. This is a case where, okay, so the last time we had an Open Cup match, we get the win against NYCFC. We follow it up with a draw at Louisville, a 0-0 draw at Louisville. I think a lot of fans sort of saw that as success because Louisville's a top team. You go in on the road, you get a point on the road, you feel good about it. I just mentioned that this was probably the best performance that we saw them play against Philly. And now they have to follow that up on the road to Rhode Island. As a fan, I'm trying to weigh how I would measure success in this game. So I think if it's a win, I think I call that a success because that means we had to score a goal, and so therefore, we scored a goal and we won. Great 3 points. I'm still of the mindset that if you get a point on the road, that's still a good result. But considering sort of our struggle scoring, Garcia ripping, lone shots aside, um, do I consider a 0-0 draw in Rhode Island a success? And maybe I do, but I feel like I still need to see some continuation of us scoring. If we go in there and it's a shootout and we lose 4-3, I might still consider that at least somewhat of a success because we're putting goals in. So I'm just curious, where do you stand on that spectrum? What are you hoping to see in this one?
Yeah, I think what's hard for me, and you will know this about me and not be surprised when I say this, but my viewpoint on team success is much more longer term than shorter term. And so I looked at Louisville and went, yeah, that was a success. You played a good game. You came back off of the Open Cup win. You played a good game, but then you laid a stinker the next weekend. And I go, well, it wasn't as much of a success as I thought, because that kind of ruined the previous weekend. And so I think for me, it's like in some ways you actually have 280 minute a 280-minute game against Rhode Island over the next 2 weekends. And
Mm-hmm.
can you win the aggregate, too? Like, it's not just about winning this game. I do think you got to win this game. And I think, like, success in this game relies on probably 2 things for me: one, scoring a goal; two, winning the game. Scoring the goal first, because I would agree with you. We lose 4-3. I go, okay, we got some of our scoring woes out of the way. Now we can come home and, like, win on aggregate against them in this set of 2 games. And so I think that's my thing, is I'd like to see us win the next 2 games on aggregate, while also probably getting a result in both games. Like, I don't necessarily want 3 points in the Jägermeister Cup and none in the league. I would take 1 in the league and 3 in the Jägermeister Cup, and be like, okay, good. It seems like we figured some things out. Now let's see where we can go forward with this season. So that's kind of my thought. It's a little bit of a longer term perspective than a, hey, what do we do this weekend? It's like, what do we do over the next 280 minutes of game time?
Lineup wise, do you think that? I mean, we've said this before. We can't predict what Bob's going to do, but if you were Bob, would you change anything from what we saw in Philly?
Um, I would potentially change some small pieces. I would not go for a wholesale change at this point because you do get a week break before the next one.
Hmm.
And so I think you got to figure that into the equation as well. But I think, your second half sub of was that bringing Biazzi off and putting Perrin Barnes on. I don't mind if you start there, like put Perrin on, let Luke get some rest. Or you move Luke back into the center back spot, and let Idris, Schuber, Vector, somebody get a rest there too. I don't I, if he keeps scoring these goals, you got to figure out how to get Jorge on the field more.
Yeah.
It's not the highest percentage shot and it's not the highest percentage chance, but he seems to find a corner when he needs to. And
Hmm.
so I think you got to figure out how to get him on the field more. So I think some of those easy swaps, I think you do. I don't want to see Bob do six new starters or six changes from what we saw on Wednesday night. I'd rather see three, two or three from what we saw on Wednesday night. The one I definitely do not want to see changed is if Jacqueline and Augie are not starting this game. I don't know what Bob's doing. So
Yeah.
it seems like that would be a silly change to make at this point.
Agreed. Based on everything we just talked about, give me a score prediction in this one. How do you think this one shakes out?
Uh, I I think if the Hounds play with the same level of intensity that they did in Philly, like I think if they come out, uh, they seem to just have a sharpness. They wanted to move the ball quickly. They wanted to find space on the field, and that's what Steve and I were thinking. Like all throughout the game, they were finding space. They were finding
Mhm.
players in space and all that kind of stuff. If they can continue to do that and then be a little bit more aggressive because it is a USL team, they're going to make mistakes that MLS teams won't make. And so you can be a little more aggressive. There's a couple times in the game that I was hoping one of the center backs would hit a 40-yard diagonal ball and find a player on the other side of the field. They didn't, and I understand that against an MLS team. Against a USL team, you take that chance. And
We
so
we
I think
call
if they
that
come
we
out
call
the
that a
same,
Piper Caulfield now. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
I'll take a uh, I would really like a 2-2 draw, like at worst. I would really like a 2-1 win, but a 2-2 draw at worst would be uh, okay with me.
Yeah, my gut as soon as I posed the question, what popped into my head was a 2-1 win. I'd love to see that. I think everything that you said is true. I think even losing 4-1 to Philly to take the confidence of playing against an MLS team, and I'm sure Bob will be harping on them that they held their own for as much as you could against the top team in the East in the MLS. And so I think to take that and now go to Rhode Island, I think they got a shot. Hopefully they get a couple goals at least and get that figured out because it needs to get figured out. And I'm with you. Augie and Jockeson together needs to be a thing, and hopefully that opens the floodgates just a little bit for us. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um, so that's what we think about this one. The game is at 4 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Justin, as you mentioned, the Hounds will play at Rhode Island this week in league play. Next week, Rhode Island comes to us as part of the Jägermeister Cup. So it will be interesting to sort of see if there's anything that we learn from each other. And then, we will play them again next weekend. But this is actually just the first of a Pittsburgh doubleheader today. But immediately following this game, the Riveters head to Flower City 1872, which is in Rochester, for those of you keeping track at home. That game kicks off at 6 p.m. So I'll mention it again, but the Steel Army is actually having a watch party at the pitch on Butler where you can watch the Riverhounds play at 4, followed by the Riveters playing at 6. So it's literally just plan on spending your whole evening there watching this. A little bit of information on Flower City. They won their opening match against FC Buffalo 2-1. They were down 1-0 until late when they ended up getting 2 goals in the 73rd and the 89th minute. Buffalo took 26 shots in that game, 19 of them on target. So this wasn't like, Flower City were just sitting there and nothing was happening. They allowed 19 shots on target, which kind of blows my mind. When you go and look at the stats on the USLW site, it's actually really cool the way that they rank all of the shots. I think San Francisco, they scored 14 goals in their first game, which is like nuts, but this is the W League. Um, the other thing is, we talked about how we're going to see Rhode Island again in a week. We will see Flower City again in less than 7 days. They're going to be at Highmark on Friday. So in between those games, the Riveters will have another game. They're going to play Cleveland on Wednesday. So just a couple of questions in that regard for you, Justin. I guess one, we know that this team has a lot of depth. We've not necessarily seen how they're going to tap into that depth as of yet, but obviously it's a bit of a compacted schedule considering the we'll call it success that we saw in their home opener. Do you think that we may see a ton of rotation in this game against Flower City, or do you think we might see it more sprinkled throughout the week within these other matches?
I would think we'll see it more in the second. If I'm Scott, I think
Yeah.
you see it more in the second two games of like, hey, you got a good entertaining draw. Your team played well. You had multiple chances throughout the game, could have scored several goals. All that kind of stuff. You didn't give much to Cleveland. They had the one off the bar too, but like you really didn't give much to Cleveland at any point in time. I'd stick pretty closely to your lineup again. I think you make two or three changes, but like you don't I don't think you go for a wholesale change. I don't think you go for, seven new players, all that kind of stuff. Where against Cleveland you might, and especially with having just played Cleveland and you can kind of go back and forth of like, okay, let me make some changes, play a different lineup that Cleveland saw the first time, and then play a different lineup than what Flower City is going to see today, and so I think it's like you can play some mind games that way and get some different looks for teams after they've already played you. And so I think that's I would hope to not see that many changes just because of how good that first game was, and that you want to continue to develop that continuity chemistry on the field. But I think you'll see some more changes throughout the week.
Yeah. We talked a little bit in the reaction show on Sunday about our top three. You can't see it behind me, but Delarose came in first, then Caulfield, then Nels. Is there any of those three that you think are absolute must starts, or anybody else that stuck out to you that you think are absolute must starts in this one?
Um, I really liked Kennedy Neighbors' work too. I thought
Mm-hmm.
she was really, really good, really, really strong. Wasn't exactly sure what position she was playing, but I think whatever position she was playing, it was almost like a false nine kind of look. And I thought she did really well in that role. Um, I think Tessa's probably a must start after sitting for 6 days. I think you put her in. I think Piper is a must start. Um, I think uh, the rest of the team, I feel like even when we started making subs in the second half, there was no dip in like
Yeah.
uh, uh, you know, talent. There was no dip in like aggressiveness. There was no change in the gameplay. Scott was making a lot of like for like subs and just getting fresh legs on the field and all of that. I really hope, and I kind of understand why she didn't go very long, but I hope to see at least a half out of Sabrina Bryan this week. I thought she
Mm-hmm.
was really, really strong, but she's a couple years out of college. She's not game fit yet, and I think she admitted that to you when she talked to you. She's got to get to game fitness. So it'd be nice to see her for a half or a little bit longer than that, because I think she did some really good work in the second half. So those are the kind of players that stuck out to me.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about, how do you measure success for the Hounds today? Similarly, how do you measure success for the Riveters? I think obviously there's a lot of high hopes for this team, and I think that a lot of people were we'll say happy with the draw at the home opener, but there's definitely an expectation that this team can come out and score. So even though we're going to be on the road in Rochester, I think, the same thought still applies. You want to get a point on the road, you want to get 3 points at home. But considering the high expectations of this team, will you be happy with a draw on the road, or do you expect that this team should deliver more even early in the season?
I mean, knowing that Flower City gave 26 shots to Buffalo, I'm hoping our number gets close to that, and I'm hoping we're just more efficient. There's no reason with 26 shots and 19 of them on target that Buffalo shouldn't have come away with 3 or 4 goals there. And so I think if they give that to the Riveters, especially the way we played in the second half with Tessa pushing a little higher and finding space in between the lines and all that kind of stuff. If all of that's still happening and we're playing the way that we are, I think we end up with maybe not 26 shots, but somewhere in the teens. And then if we just can be more efficient with our shots, like than Buffalo was, I think we put a couple more of those away. And then even if we give up some goals on the other end, I think we could still score more. So I will be I will be okay with the draw. Um, Again, because long-term view, you're playing Cleveland again on Wednesday. Can you get, even though that one's on the road, you've already seen them. Can you get a result this time? Or can you get 3 points this time? And then again, you see Flower City at home. And so you're coming back to hopefully what will be just as raucous of a crowd on a Friday night in Pittsburgh, and you can use that to get 3 points. So again, long term view, if it all works out, I think we're good. But I would love a win this time.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think anything less than a win, then you start to question, like, okay, has the success of this team been slightly overhyped? But we will see. This is going to be a lot more difficult, I think, to kind of predict just because the USLW is so kind of crazy. But give me your score prediction here. What do you think? What do you think happens?
Uh Give me 3-2 crazy fun times.
Ooh, okay. I was going to say three. It depends on who starts in goal. I thought Nels was outstanding. I was going to say 3-1, but I'll say 3-0. I'll say that the shutout streak continues. But yeah, regardless, I'm predicting a win here too. That is what we think. Let us know what you think. Justin, anything else going on here that we should touch on before we get out of here and get ready for 2 great games today?
Nope, not really. But thanks for those of you who said hi last night and introduced yourself and said you listen to the show. We really appreciate that. And Mike and Steve and I, we all love doing this. Josh, we love giving you guys content, talking about the Hounds. And so thanks for saying something. Laura Ellen and I will be out next weekend again to watch the Riveters and the Riverhounds. And so if you're at either of those games next weekend, again, please come say hi. I am usually at the top of the Paul Child stand, and so come say hi.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one next week. As we mentioned, the Riveters will be home on Friday night, and the Hounds will be at home on Saturday night. So if you like to tailgate and party, you've got lots of time to devote to Highmark Stadium next weekend. Speaking of, as I mentioned, the Steel Army is having that watch party at the pitch on Butler today. The party starts at 3:30, and the Hounds game starts at 4 with Riveters at 6. So hopefully we see you there. Otherwise, as I mentioned, that's what we think. Let us know what you think. We appreciate the support, and thanks, everybody. We will be back with more Hounds and Riveters content for you very, very soon.